Hi all, this is a lesson on how to write the evaluation part of the article review assignment. So far we have covered number 1, the introduction, number 2, how to write the summary based on the article given, and also the conclusion. So the other part for this week would be number 3, which is evaluation of the article. So what you need to do is you need to choose one out of the 3 articles given on eCampus and write an article review assignment based on that article. Um, so number 3 is to write the evaluation of the article or to evaluate the article. So how do we evaluate the article? So there are a few things that we can do in order to evaluate the article that you have chosen. First, what you can do is you can talk about the evidence in the article. So does the evidence in the article support what it is trying to show or prove? So what is evidence? Evidence is when you say something and um, when you have an assumption, you support your assumption with factual information. So let's say, for example, when I say jelly students are gaining weight because they like to eat at KFC. So what is that? Is that a factual information or just an assumption? So that is basically an assumption. That is what I think. That is my assumption that jelly students are gaining weight because they like to eat at KFC. So if it is an assumption, it is not strong enough. What I need to say is I need to back up my assumption with an evidence. For example, I say jelly students are gaining weight because they like to eat at KFC. This is because according to a study by UMK, 20% of jelly students agree that they are gaining weight since entering UMK because there is a KFC nearby. So that is an evidence that I give to support my opinion or my assumption. If you take a look at your textbook, page 54, paragraph D, um, in this paragraph you can see whether or not the author of this article support his opinion with an evidence. So for example, here we have another champion of urbanization is environmentally steward Brand. According to Brand, living in cities has a smaller impact on the environment than living in suburbs and rural areas. So this is an assumption given by this person called Stewart Brand. So Stewart Brand says, according to Brand, living in cities has a smaller impact on the environment than living in suburbs. So what is suburbs? Suburbs means places outside the city and rural areas. So what do you think? What is your opinion? Do you think living in the cities is better towards the environment as compared to living in rural areas, or living in rural areas is better to the environment as compared to living in the cities? So Stewart Brand has an assumption. Stewart Brand's assumption is living in the cities has a smaller impact on the environment than living in outside the cities. And this is an assumption. But Stewart Brand, if you take a look at this paragraph, what do you think? Does Stewart Brand come out with an evidence to support his opinion? So you may pause this video and take a look at page 54 and read the whole paragraph of paragraph D. So you see whether or not Stewart Brand has supported his opinion that living in the cities has a smaller impact on the environment than living in outside the cities with evidence. So let us continue. So in paragraph D, after giving his opinion that living in city has a smaller impact on the environment than living in outside the cities, Stewart Brand says that this is because cities allow half of the world's population to live on about 4% of the land. So that means half of the world's population. So let's say we have 7 billion people in the world. If everyone lives in the city, we only need 4% of the land. So let us, for example, in KL and Penang, we live in apartments, in condominiums. So that means thousands of people can live in a small piece of land. City roads, sewers, and power lines are shorter and require fewer resources to build and operate. So that means in the cities, we need shorter power lines. So shorter power lines, power cables, meaning fewer resources needed to build and operate. And also shorter roads and sewers. City apartments require less energy to heat, cool, and light than houses in other areas. So according to, if you have finished reading paragraph D, Stewart Brand's evidence is that if you live in the city, you will drive less because you will have public transportation, so less emission towards the atmosphere. According to Brand, if you live in the city, you will walk more because the places are nearby, as compared to living in rural areas where you'll have to drive all the time. So according to Brand, living in cities has a smaller impact on the environment than living in suburbs and rural areas. So do you think the evidence given by Stewart Brand is strong or weak? So for this part of the assignment, talking about the evidence, you will have to explain which is the evidence. So if there are like 5 or 6 evidences, you pick 1 or 2 and you explain which is the evidence and say whether or not the evidence is strong or weak. So what do you think about Stewart Brand's evidence just now on page 54, paragraph D? Is the evidence strong or weak? If the evidence is strong, you say in your assignment, in your article review assignment, so you can write um, Stewart Brand says that, or the article says that, living in cities has a smaller impact on the environment. However, the evidence given in the article is not strong enough. This is because, so you support your opinion with a justification. So this is because according to someone in the internet, so you can go and Google, according to the United Nations, for example, according to the United Nations, living in the cities has bigger impact on the environment as compared to rural areas because there are more carbon being emitted in the cities. There are more vehicles in the cities. So that means living in the cities has bigger impact on the environment than living in the suburbs. So that means when you disagree, you justify why you disagree with the evidence. So if you agree with the evidence given, so you can say that the article says that living in cities has a smaller impact on the environment. I agree with this statement because the evidence given in the article is strong enough to support, to justify the statement. So the article says that cities allow half of the world's population to live on about 4% of the land. And this is exactly true because if we take a look at major cities in the world, most people live in apartments and also condominiums. So that means they need just a small piece of land to um, for thousands of people, which is better for the environment. So less trees being cut down and less forests being destroyed. So that is what we do for the evidence. We support our evidence with justification. So another example is from page 55 of the textbook, paragraph K. So if you take a look at paragraph K, for example, sentence number, the second sentence, however, good planning requires looking decades ahead, reserving land for parks and public transportation, for example, before the city grows over it. So it says here in this paragraph, if you want to plan for a city in the future, we'll have to look decades ahead. We'll have to think 20 or 30 years in the future before the city grows over it. So that means if we are building a road, we'll have to make sure we have some reserved spaces so that in the future we can expand the road bigger. If we are build buildings, you'll have to make sure we have enough space so that 10, 20 years in the future we can build um, roads or LRT or MRT without having to destroy the buildings. So is there any evidence given to support this statement? You can pause the video and take a look at paragraph K. Yes, there is an evidence given, and the evidence is because the Earth's population headed toward 9 or 10 billion. Dense and carefully planned cities are looking more like a solution. So that means the article given to support this statement that we need good planning that looks decades ahead because in the future there will be 9 or 10 billion people. So you can say whether or not the evidence is strong or weak. So, or first, if there is any evidence. So if there is no evidence, you can say in your article review assignment, um, there is no evidence given. If there is an evidence, you can say whether or not the evidence is strong or weak. So you can agree and disagree. You say, so the article says that good planning requires looking decades ahead. I, I, and I agree with the article because the evidence given is strong enough, in which there will be 9 or 10 billion people in the future. And according to the statistics, so you justify your opinion, your agreement with a citation. So you Google in the internet. So you say, according to a statistic produced by the United Nations, in 2050 there will be 10 billion people in the world. So today we have 7 billion. Or you can also disagree. You say the article says that good planning requires looking decades ahead. And the evidence given in the article is that in the future there will be 10 billion people. However, I disagree with this opinion because according to the statistics given by the UN, in 2050 or 2000 there will be only 8 billion people, for example. Or you can also agree, you say, according to statistics from the United Nations or from the University of Malaysia, Kelantan, it is said that um, there are 1,000 people being born every day. So that means in the future there will be a lot of people. So that is why good planning is required if we want to develop cities in the future. So you will have to look decades ahead, 20 or 30 years in the future. So that is what it is about when we talk about the evidence. So does the evidence in the article support what it is trying to show or prove? So first, in your article review assignment, when you are evaluating, you find if there is a statement given, is there any evidence to support that assumption or to support that opinion? If there is an evidence given, is that evidence strong or weak? And if you say it is strong, you justify why it is strong. If you say it is weak, you justify why it is weak. So you can Google in the internet to support your opinion. So you say according to this or that person, according to UMK, according to the United Nations, or according to the Ministry of Science and Technology, or according to the Ministry of Health. So the second point that you can have for your evaluation part is what is the the article's main audience, and is it well suited to that audience. So who would be the main audience, the readers of that particular article? Teenagers, adults, science students, university students, society in general. So who would be the audience? Who would be uh, the um, the reader of that article? So, for example, if let's say we talk about um, this article here, King Tut's Family Secret by Zahi Hawass. So, who would be the reader of this article? Students, children, teenagers, university students, um, specifically who? Students who are studying geology, husbandry students, or geology students, or archaeology students. So you have to mention that in your assignment. So who would be the main audience, the main readers of that article? And once you have identified the main readers or the main audience, and you have to say whether or not the article is suitable to that audience. If it is suitable, why it is suitable. If it is not suitable, why it is not suitable. So for example, if let's say we talk about the article about vaping, so who would be the audience of that article? Teenagers, perhaps. So what do you think about the article? Is it suitable to teenagers? Maybe yes. So you have to explain why. Maybe it is not that long. So it needs 5 minutes to read. So that means teenagers can read. And the language is not difficult. So easy to be understood by teenagers. Um, if it is not suitable, why not? Maybe because the vocabulary is very hard to be understood. The article is very long, so no one is interested to read. Um, the English language is very hard, for example. So you give your reasons why the article is suitable or not suitable to the intended readers. The third point would be, is the author or authors of the article biased or not biased? So subjective means bias. The opposite of bias is neutral. So for example, when I say, um, if you take a look at the advertisements on the TV, for example, um, Dato Vida is promoting her Pamoga. Um, so she says that Pamoga is good for your health. So do you think there is a bias? Do you think Dato Vida is being biased or being neutral? So when he is promoting his product. So can you think for a while? Or Alif Shukri is promoting his D-Herbs product. So is there any bias? So both Datuk Vida and Alif Shukri claim that their products are the best, good for people's health, and everyone should buy their product. So they talk about all the positive things about their product. Do you think they are being biased or neutral? So if you go to the hospital, the doctors will say, don't buy Pamoga and D-Herbs because they don't have certification from the Ministry of Health. So that is bias. So perhaps Datuk Vida and Alif Shukri are being biased towards their product. So the same goes the article. Do you think the author is biased or neutral? So which part is the author is being biased, or which part the author is being neutral? So let us take a look at page 38 of the textbook. Paragraph A. So can you read this paragraph, pause this video and read this paragraph and decide whether or not this person, the author of this article, Zahi Hawass, is being biased or neutral. So if you think he is biased, you have to justify why he is being biased. If you say he is neutral, you have to justify why he is being neutral. So he says that as an archaeologist and scholar of ancient Egyptian history, I believe that we should honor the ancient dead and let them rest in peace. However, on the other hand, there are some secrets of the ancient Egyptian pharaohs that we can learn only by studying their mummies. So that means I here is Zahi Hawass, the author of this article. So do you think Zahi Hawass is being neutral or biased? So to me, he is somehow being biased. So he says we still need to study the mummies. Although he said that we should let them rest in peace, but we still need to study the mummies. So he is being biased because he is an archaeologist. So if he says that we cannot study the mummies, that means he cannot do his work. So because he is an archaeologist, he says that we should study the mummies to know the secrets of the past. So that means as an archaeologist, Zahi Hawass is being biased because he says we should study the mummies. So some other people says we shouldn't study the mummies because we should let them rest in peace. We shouldn't dig their graves. So that is being biased. So if you think Zahi Hawass is being biased, you justify why he is being biased. So because he is an archaeologist, that is what he do. That is what he does, and that is why he says that we should study the mummies and dig their graves. If you think he is being neutral, you justify why he is being neutral. So like our science teachers back in school, our biology teacher says that um, dissecting the frogs and mouse in the science lab is okay because we are studying. But some other people will say that it is cruelty towards animals. So that means our science teachers are somehow being biased because that is what they do, that is what they teach. So that is why they say um, dissecting frogs and mouse in the science lab in our school is okay. So it is not part of cruelty towards animals. So that is bias. So that is also what you do in your article review assignment. You state whether or not the author is being biased or neutral. If the author is biased, which part he or she is being biased, and justify why. If the author is neutral, which part of the article the author is neutral, and justify why. So it is possible that in the whole article the author is neutral, or there are also some bias in the article. The other part of yours of the evaluation is, would you recommend this article to other people and why? So you'll have to state why, justify. Has the article made a significant contribution? So what kind of contribution? Any contribution towards you as a student, towards the society, towards the nation, towards the science field, towards the research field, towards a group of people, towards the people, for example, people living in Jili, towards the fishermen. So in what way? So you will have to explain. So there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points altogether. So that means you can have 5 paragraphs to explain. So how long doesn't matter. And any other relevant factor you can think of. Perhaps there are points not mentioned in the article you think should be mentioned, so you can write in this paragraph. Perhaps there are points mentioned in the article but you think shouldn't be mentioned because people already know about it. So you can also write that in that paragraph. So any other relevant factor you can think of. So any questions regarding the evaluation part, you can always text me through WhatsApp. And so using the 2 hours period tomorrow, you can do with your partner the evaluation part of the article. So thank you very much. I'll see you again soon.